A lot of athletes will say it didn't make a difference. A lot of them say it doesn't change your life. But I guess with Roger Bannister, it changed his life forever. And for me, it changed my life forever.
It's a very, very big prize still. And although we run the metric mile in major championships, 1,500 metres, being a mile world record holder is something that, you know, a lot of us dream and have dreamt about.
3/4 of the mile, the effort was still barely perceptible. The time was 3 minutes, 0.7 seconds, and by now the crowd was roaring. A 4-minute mile was possible. Somehow, to do it, I had to run the last lap in 59 seconds.
It's still, these days, is the first thing kids look to, 1,500-metre runners. When will I break 4 minutes? And I think that adds to the mystique, and all those traditions and things just help.
You never know what a human being can, you know, bring in the future, because each year you can see people are getting stronger and, you know, fit well, and maybe, you know, to see 3, 4, 40, it's possible, because in this life everything is possible.
The faint line of the finishing tape stood ahead as a haven of peace after the struggle. I leapt to the tape, like a man taking his last spring to save himself from the chasm that threatens to engulf him. I knew I had done it before I even heard the sound.
There was such cheering that I then could hear. I don't think I heard the crowd while I was running, but I heard it then. And I heard the announcement that it was a new track record, a new British record, British all-comers record, European record, Commonwealth record, etc., and then world record, and then 3 minutes. And that was, nobody heard anything after that, 3 minutes.
3 minutes 59.4, a time beyond the reach of so many great athletes. Paavo Nurmi of Finland, Jack Lovelock of New Zealand, Britain's Sidney Wooderson, Arne Andersson of Sweden, who came so desperately close, and his countryman Gunder Haag, who came closest of all. Bannister had set his sights on a different target, and he was a firm favourite to win the Olympic 1,500 metres title in Helsinki, until the organisers inserted an extra round.
Well, I must say that my heart sank at that, and although I did my best and I got to the last corner at the right position on the outside, I just was not able to sprint, and I came fourth. Now, had I won that Olympic 1,500 metres title, I'm sure I would have retired. So I think it was at that point, after the Helsinki Olympics, I made the decision I won't retire. I can just manage to keep going for 2 years. In 2 years' time, there will be the Commonwealth Games and the European Games. But I realized that in order to be sure of being able to win those events, I had to be able to run a 4-minute mile.
The young medical student had analysed his problem, and he knew he could not solve it by himself.
In 1953, which was after I'd, well, done a 4.2 mile and could see the prospect of a 4-minute mile, my friends Chris Brasher and Chris Chataway were being coached by Frank Stamford, whom I had, of course, already met. And we were all finding it difficult to keep going in training, and I joined that group. That was when the development grew through that winter, and the plans to take the opportunity to break the 4-minute mile evolved. So I got it in my mind, and then I think by the October, November, December, we were all working towards that objective.
While Bannister's team endured the English winter, their most dangerous rival enjoyed the Australian sun. John Landy possessed a formidable talent, but did he have the self-belief?
I didn't need to have company, and I didn't need a coach. I had my own goals. I had in mind that I probably could break Haag's record if everything went right, but the idea of running 4 minutes for the mile, really, I felt, very doubtful whether I could do that.
I was very worried that winter, it seemed to me almost inconceivable that a man who could run 4.2, as I had done the previous year, given the Australian summer, which is in our winter, could not do it.
But his worries were misplaced. Despite 4 major assaults, Landy never came within 2 seconds of his target. In April 1954, he left for Europe to continue the chase.
Knowing that he was already travelling to Finland, where conditions would be perfect, I was worried lest he should do it before we did.
In effect, Landy had taken their decision for them. There could be no more delay, no more waiting for the ideal day. And in truth, conditions were far from ideal at Iffley Road on May the 6th. The cautious Bannister had his doubts, but Franz Stamfel swept them aside.
If you are given this chance, you will never forgive yourself if you don't take it. And, I mean, that was a characteristically dogmatic, confident assertion, which is all very well for the coach to make. I mean, coaches don't have anything to lose. This was nice and reassuring. But it wasn't until the wind dropped a bit and we were watching the flag on the church steeple, because it was St. George's Day, it didn't seem to be standing out quite so strongly, and the feeling, well, this may be our only chance. I said, okay, you know, we'd go ahead. Everybody was getting a bit irritated with me at that stage.
That irritation did not survive the next 4 minutes, as Roger Gilbert Bannister loped into history.
Well, I was quite amazed, really, because I wasn't prepared that anyone would break 4 minutes for the mile. I began to believe that it was, in fact, a very difficult target and might take 10 years or so to get there. But I thought perhaps if he did it, maybe it wasn't such a barrier and maybe I could do it. But again, I was looking to run faster than I had before.
His confidence was well-founded. Bannister's record lasted just 46 days before Landy ran a startling 3 minutes 58 seconds. The floodgates were open.
Australia's John Landy, fastest miler in the world.
I'd say the euphoria lasted about 24 hours maximum, and then I was back to the business of how do you beat this Bannister man in Vancouver.
With John Landy's breaking of the record only 6 weeks later, it became clear that the 4-minute mile would mean nothing if I didn't manage to defeat John Landy, my great Australian rival, in Vancouver in the Empire Games.
They called it the race of the century, and for once they did not exaggerate. On that August day in 1954, Bannister versus Landy would have filled any stadium on earth.
There was a huge amount of pressure. It was a very difficult situation, and I can't imagine that perhaps other than the Johnson-Lewis clash in Seoul, where so much sort of speculation and interest was sort of centred on an athletic event. It was pretty tough.
Racing at this level is very gladiatorial. There were the two of us. It was more like an athletic prize fight between two people.
After 300 metres, I grabbed the lead, and then I just set out to try to remorselessly grind Roger into the ground if I could. And I realised a very risky strategy, but I thought I had a 50-50 chance of pulling it off. But it meant that really to work, I had to have shaken him off by the 3/4 point, and I didn't do that. Roger caught up quite impressively in the 3rd lap.
And then I suspected he would want to know where I was, because he'd made his effort, and as he glanced over his left shoulder,
it was essentially a look of hope. It wasn't a look of despair, it was a look of hope. And when I looked up, he's going past on the other side, and I couldn't catch him. I couldn't stay with him, and he won.
3 minutes 58.8 seconds, the fastest mile of Bannister's life. 3 weeks later, he offered one final proof of his greatness by winning the European 1500 metres title in Bern. He then retired from athletics to start a distinguished medical career. But today, 40 years on, Roger Bannister remembers the contribution of his fiercest rival.
we were foils to one another, And if I hadn't had the prospect of trying to beat John Landy, I wouldn't have put that extra effort, small though it now seems to modern runners, into my training. And we might not have seen a 4-minute mile in 1954 if Landy had not existed.
Landy ran on, but he was destined never to win a major title. Some blamed the disappointments he had already suffered. Others saw him stop to help a fallen opponent and concluded that John Landy was just too nice.
I don't think I'm very nice at all. That's what I mean. Basically, if you're going to a race, you're going to win it. I tried very hard to win my races, but I could never hate or dislike people. I mean, I thought really at the bottom line, what the hell does it matter?
Some competitors fire the public imagination more than others. They don't always win the most medals, but they've got crowd appeal. These are the crowd pleasers, the personalities who seem to be a vanishing race. Take Derek Ibbotson, for example. He drew crowds to athletic meetings all over the country. His great moment, and I'll never forget it, came at the White City in July 1957. That's when he smashed the world mile record of 3 minutes, 58 seconds, held by Australia's John Landy.
Like many another Yorkshireman, Derek Ibbotson knew his own mind and frequently spoke it. It was a trait inherited from a sports-loving father.
Well, being a Yorkshireman, I thought I was talented all the time, and I fancied myself as a footballer, and I thought, well, eventually I might play for Huddersfield Town. Well, my father came to watch me play for Almabury Grammar School on one Saturday morning for the school, and when it finished, I said, how did I do, Dad? He said, well, son, you've got a lot of energy, but you haven't got much idea. He said, if I were you, I'd stick to running. And of course, in those days, if Dad said you were a runner, you were a runner. There was no arguments, and that was it, and he just took me the football boots off me and burnt them, and that was it.
Ibbotson Sr. was an excellent judge, and his son swiftly revealed a rare and encouraging talent. But the real breakthrough arrived when he joined the RAF. With full-time training and extra rations, Ibbotson's improvement was dramatic, and victory over Chris Chataway in the 3A's championships brought him a place in Britain's Olympic team at 5,000 metres. It was a great mistake. His real strength lay at the shorter distances. And even though he struggled through to a 5,000 metres bronze medal, he knew that the Melbourne 1,500 metres could have been his race.
I think I had a good chance of winning gold, and in fact it would have been a better event than the 5,000 for me, but it wasn't to be. I've always regretted it ever since, because the following summer I broke the world record, 3 minutes 57.2, and that time would have waltzed the Olympics in 56, but, you know, what will be, will be.
Ibbotson, Lewandowski and the Olympic champion Ronnie Delaney in 4th place. Delaney with his devastating finish, a very dangerous contender. And they're coming up now to the bell.
Oh, when I was going for the world record, I mean, there was no doubt I was capable of doing it. We had Stanislaw Youngblood, who a month before had broken the world record for 1,500 metres, 3:38.1. We had Delaney, who was Olympic champion. And I mean, I'm not being big-headed, but when you're really very, very fit and you're running very well, you think you're never going to be beat. I knew if I left it late, Delaney was much faster than me. It was an 800, 1,500 metre man, and I was a 1,500 metre, 5,000 man. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to hold it. But I knew if I went from 300 metres, made it a long finish, I could take his sting out of him. Fortunately for me, when I went, he didn't expect it. He was in behind somebody. He didn't see my break until I'd done about 30 or 40 yards. By then it was too late. I shot down the final bend, and I won by about 8 or 10 yards with Delaney coming through fast to finish second, but I'd beaten him by about 10 or 12 yards. And of course I'd got the world record and beaten the Olympic champion and the world 1,500 metre champion. And the announcer came on. Ladies and gentlemen, race number so-and-so, the 1 mile invitation. The winner is Derek Ibbotson of the RAF. In a new, I think, New English native record, a new British all-comers record, a new Commonwealth record, a new European record, and a new world record. And of course the place just erupted. There were 55,000 people there, and you couldn't hear the time. And then he had to repeat it in the time, a new world record of 3 minutes 57.2.
The IAAF initially refused to ratify that world record, as Ibbotson had openly used a pacemaker. Eventually, reality was recognized, but even then, his delight was short-lived.
I ran it in July 19th, and I think by about September, October of 57, I actually got the world record accepted. And then, of course, Elliott then broke it in the, it was the June or July of 58.
You're now watching one of the greatest athletic achievements of all time, the greatest mile race ever run by a young Australian who may well be the outstanding athlete of the century. In fact, the first 5 were all to finish in under 4 minutes. Elliott's time, 3 minutes, 54.5. And at the end of it, this incredible runner isn't even puffed.
I don't know that I've ever thought holding a world record was terribly important. I don't know what I thought was important. I mean, the things that I got my satisfaction out of were knowing that I had some sort of self-control and I was able to make myself do things that I wanted to do, but my body didn't want to do. I know I used to get very nervous before races, incredibly, uncomfortably, powerfully, sickeningly nervous. I used to hate the period before a race. And you'd have to try and look Mr. Cool, while inside the whole world was rushing around. And then at the end of it all, a relief, but somewhere in all that package there had to have been enormous satisfaction for me to keep going.
Herb Elliott's short career was littered with staggering achievement. He was never beaten at the mile or 1,500 metres. He won an Olympic gold medal in the world record time. He stripped almost 3 seconds from Ibbotson's world mile record. And he walked away from his sport at the age of 22. The man whom many consider the finest miler in history was coached by Percy Cerutty, whose radical methods brought extraordinary results.
It was the spiritual component of his coaching, I think, which separated him from the rest of the field. I had a very strong feeling of a separateness in me between my body and the spirit, the thing that drives you. And so when you're out on a training run and you were at the point of exhaustion, which you tried to get to on a training run, in fact you believed a training run was useless until you got to that point, you became very conscious of you, the real me, wanting to go on, and this shell that you carry around called the body wanting to stop. And you just got yourself to the point where you just ignored it, and so that you developed a sort of a self-mastery.
And it's only 40 yards to go, and Herb Elliott is coming up to the finish. He's got 30 yards to go, and the time is 3 minutes 56, 57, 58, 59, and a 4-minute mile.
Elliott declared his dazzling ability with 2 gold medals at the 1958 Empire Games. But he made it seem almost too easy, and the media searched for answers. The interrogation was merciless.
You have a crew cut because you like it, or because you think it's lighter, or what?
Well, to tell the honest truth, to keep the dandruff away. I have a crew cut every now and then. I find that well, you don't have to do your hair most of the time. I guess I'm a bit lazy.
And do you not shave because you think that helps when you're racing?
I guess that's because I'm a bit lazy too.
You sound a very lazy fellow for a sub-4-minute miler.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
With the Cardiff Games over, the Australians began a light-hearted European tour. Then they reached Dublin, and the mood changed.
Nobody really cared about this meeting in Sandford, in Dublin. And then we started to realise, my God, look at the crowd. We'd better put on a bit of a show here for this mob. So we decided, we then set up a race plan, and everything went according to plan, and we broke the world record by 2 or 3 seconds, so we smashed it. But I guess the plan that we set up made a world record possible, but we didn't say, let's break the world record, really. We just said, you know, let's run fast.
We're looking now at the greatest runner in the world today. The world mile record holder, the world half-mile record holder, the world record holder at 800 metres, the Olympic champion at that distance, Peter Snell of New Zealand.
Herb Elliott called it the Golden Mile. It's been the Miracle Mile. I've loved being part of something which, for one reason or another, has captured the imagination.
Elliott was an unreasonably difficult act to follow, but Peter Snell possessed the necessary strength and talent. After winning the 800 meters at the Rome Olympics, he nibbled at Elliott's world mile record 2 years later. In November 1964, he lowered the mile time to 3:54.1. But in 1965, still at the peak of his powers and with 3 Olympic gold medals to his name, Snell announced his retirement.
It just didn't seem reasonable as an amateur athlete to continue to do that just for the glory. And let's face it, that's why I did it. I felt I had acquired enough glory, and time was to move on to other facets of my career. The desire to be successful and achieve just doesn't go away when your athletic career is over. And so that was a concern, and my lack of education was really actually got to me a bit. And I think Chris Brasher has an article, I don't like that article, but it's probably true, where he sees me as feeling I'm a failure in spite of all the athletic successes.
Snell attacked his academic shortcomings with the same drive and urgency he displayed on the track. He acquired his doctorate in exercise physiology, and he now teaches at the University of Texas. He is still his own man, and he is still competing.
I work in a medical school situation where it's very cutthroat professionally, and the anchor that I have is that regardless of how good you think you are, that I at least have accomplished something that was world class, and that can never be taken away from me.
Michel Jazy was an athlete without illusions. To general surprise, he had won a silver medal in the 1960 Olympic 1500 meters. But for the Frenchman, that medal signified something far greater than second place.
Elliott était un personnage d'un autre monde. Pour moi, c'était déjà, en pleine activité, c'était déjà un homme de légende et inaccessible à tous les coureurs de demi-fond. Alors je me considérais personnellement champion olympique. Petit champion olympique, mais quand même champion olympique. Deuxième derrière Elliott, ma foi, c'est excellent déjà.
In the 4 years after 1960, Jazy won the European 1500 meters title, finished 4th in the Olympic 5,000 meters, and set world best performances at 2 and 3,000 meters and 2 miles. Yet still, there was something to achieve.
Je souhaitais un jour avoir mon nom inscrit sur les tablettes du record du monde du mile. Ça m'attirait, c'était une pulsion intellectuelle plus que physique qui m'attirait. Je voulais absolument être au recordman du monde du mile.
Ambition became reality at Rennes on June the 9th, 1965, when delirious success followed initial disappointment.
Immédiatement à l'arrivée, il y a un officiel qui me dit pas de chance, il a échoué à 2 dixièmes. J'étais triste et le speaker a annoncé record du monde battu. Alors c'était la grande fête. C'était la grande fête toute la soirée. J'ai quand même dormi 2 heures la nuit qui a suivi. Je ne trouvais pas le sommeil, j'étais bouleversé. Je voyais Elliott courir, je voyais Peter Snell courir, je voyais Bannister courir. Tout ça s'est passé dans la nuit et je ne trouvais pas le sommeil. Mais je ne me sentais pas fatigué. Le lendemain, en lisant la presse, je ne me sentais pas du tout de fatigue.
While he was competing, Jazy enjoyed the status of national hero. He continued to compete into his 30th year. Then, in June 1966, he retired, and a certain disillusion set in.
En France, les Français, à une époque, se sentaient concernés par le mile parce que un des leurs était recordman du monde. Mais maintenant, à présent, il m'arrive beaucoup d'occasions où les gens ignorent qui est Michel Jazy et que, si j'étais l'ancien recordman du monde du mile. Il m'est arrivé il y a 3-4 ans d'aller à faire un footing à Montréal et de m'entraîner sur le Mont-Royal. Et j'ai trouvé un jeune étudiant américain qui faisait du footing et j'ai fait un petit trajet avec lui et on s'est mis à parler un peu, puisqu'il parlait, il était américain mais il parlait quand même un peu le français, vu qu'il vivait à Montréal. Et on s'est mis à parler un petit peu, il me disait tiens, d'où êtes-vous? Je suis français, mais vous courez beaucoup? Oui, j'ai beaucoup couru, je fais du demi-fond et du fond. Qu'est-ce que vous avez comme performance? Oh, j'ai réalisé une époque 3,53, 6 au mile. Il s'est arrêté,
il m'a donné mon nom, il m'a dit vous êtes Michel Jazy. C'est une grande fierté pour moi. Je vous assure, ça a été un grand moment pour moi, c'est vrai. Surtout que c'est un jeune.
Jazy's successor as holder of the mile record emerged from the decade which virtually invented youth. Jim Ryun was a squeaky clean child of the 60s, the preppy product of middle America, exceptional only for his ability to run extremely fast.
My high school coach was a very visionary type person. He thought I could not only become the national high school record holder, but the first high school boy to run under 4 minutes. And he was that type of person. He began planting those visions, and it was not long after running under 4 minutes as a high school boy that he began getting me to think about the fact that I could be a world record holder.
The visions duly drifted into focus. Jazy's record fell at Berkeley, California, 3:51.3. A year later, 1967, another 2/10 were shed at Bakersfield. But the 1968 Olympics brought defeat by Kip Keino in the thin air of Mexico City, and suddenly the pressure began to crowd in on Ryun. In the US Collegiate Championships, he scandalized the nation by stepping off the track.
I needed time to recoup after Mexico, and actually during those championships I had really given very serious thought to the fact that I would never race again, and shortly after that I began getting more comfortable with the fact that that truly would be the end of my running. Perhaps a week afterwards, a man by the name of Howard Cosell called me from ABC and said, would you like to go on national TV and explain what happened?
I say one thing to you, and again, thanks for dropping by. No man who does what man has never done before and what man has not done since can be called a quitter. Good luck to you.
Thank you, Harry. And as a result of that, I started feeling a little better about the situation. About 8 months later, I decided that perhaps I did want to run again, and Ann and I shared a wonderful period of time just with some of the racing that took place, but it was very serious for me at that point. I wanted a break.
Come the 1972 US Olympic trials, and Ryun recovered his real form.
Jim Ryun, to me, looks now like a man from whom all the tension of the last 4 years has at least temporarily been removed.
But that success was merely the prelude to a fateful 1,500 meters at the Munich Olympic Stadium.
Jim Ryun right at the back. He's made no sort of move at all, but he's capable of a tremendous lap. And Ryan's gone down, and Ryun, he's out of it beyond all doubt.
The Americans pleaded for his reinstatement, and the pleas were rejected.
But finally, about 2 years after the Munich experience, one night I was kneeling beside my bed and I was praying, and I said, Lord, I don't understand. My life used to be really wonderful, but it's not so wonderful now. And I felt the Lord said to me, that man in Munich who could have reinstated you, you're very bitter towards him, and until you forgive him, life will continue as it is. So I forgave him that night, and I felt much better, and it took a period of time for me to truly be released from that experience. But in 1984, at the Los Angeles Olympics, he was walking by on the large screen TV, and I saw him, but I didn't have those same emotions, and I know that, God really brought about a healing in my life.
Some faint air of the 60s still clings to this complex man, but today, after all his traumas, he has come to terms with his past.
I'm honored that I was a world record holder in the mile. For me, it will always be a cherished thing, and I put that in perspective by the fact that until I entered high school, I was not able to make an athletic team. So to have achieved in my lifetime a world record, I look back on that, and I truly know that God does answer prayers, because I would never have imagined this happening to me in my lifetime.
Ryun's record survived for nearly 8 years. But one 1,500 meters race told us that its days were numbered.
And it's Walker chasing Baye, but Baye won't be caught. Baye's got to win it, and it looks as if it's very close to the world record. Baye wins, Walker next, Chipcho next, Dixon next, and the world record has been taken apart.
From nowhere, the first African to break the world record in the big meet like the Coe Games.
And Baye probably ran the most perfect race of his career that day. He broke the world record and probably ran the greatest foot race of all time. No pacemakers, no emotion, straight to the front, and broke the world record. And of course I finished second, breaking the world record, taking 5 seconds off my personal best time, as my coach said I could have, and finished second. But that's really, I guess, where it all started for me.
15 months after breaking the metric record, Bailly took over at 1 mile, striding through the Jamaican evening in 3 minutes 51 seconds precisely.
The organizers of the Jamaica race brought a trophy before the race to the press conference, introduced the trophy to us, that this will be a dream mile. Anybody who will win this race will take this. I was very impressed with the trophy. I wanted to get the trophy. I didn't think about breaking the world record.
Well, the strange thing is I was actually invited to do the race in Jamaica, and I turned the invitation down. And of course, sitting back here in the winter in New Zealand, and you're seeing superb times coming out of the world events, and thinking, my gosh, here I am still running cross-country, haven't even started speed work yet, and here's a Tanzanian running 3:51, faster than I'd ever run before in my life. My best time was only 3:54. How could I run that quick? And then I went on to Oslo in 1975, and I ran a 1,500 metres time of 3:32.4, which was my personal best time, unaided that night, no pacemakers. And I knew then that I was capable of running a very fast mile, and that's when I wrote to the meet promoter saying, change the 1,500 metres in Gothenburg to a mile, and I'll have attempted the world record. I guess the hype and the tension, the build-up was there, and it was just one of those nights where everything went perfect. I ran the first quarter in a shade over 55, and then the second quarter slowed down dramatically because my pacemaker dropped out, and I was left by myself. But I didn't panic. I just strode to the tape, and I knew I'd broken the world record. I just knew it. And then people were running and dancing and cheering and clapping, and then somebody put a watch under me and said, 3:49. I'd broken 3:50. And I guess of all the races that I ran, and I ran nearly 1,000 races in my career, that night changed my whole life. And I thought, well, yeah, I've broken the world record, it's neat. I'll go back and I'll phone my mum and just tell her what I've done. And I got back to the hotel room, and there was a bath full of champagne, and the phone started ringing, and it rang, and it rang, and it rang, and it rang for a week. And the first interview I did was with Time magazine, and this lady got on the phone from America, and she said to me, well, Mr. Walker, well done, and all this sort of stuff, you know. She said, I have to ask you, though, she said, how many laps is there to a mile? And I thought, oh, my God, it's started already.
Many of the finest milers have enhanced their world records with Olympic victory. John Walker obeyed that tradition. But it was not the victory he had planned, for Africa's boycott of the Montreal Games had cost Filbert Bailly his chance to challenge for gold.
When two great athletes come together, or any sports people come together, the people want to see the best compete against each other. And that's what makes hype. And I guess that's what people will always be remembered for. And we were a little cheated, I guess, through politics. And when you look back at the 80 boycott, the 84 boycott, the 76 boycott, who got cheated? Athletes. That's the only people. The politicians live and die. They don't care. I mean, they're just people that are voted in every 3 or 4 years and make decisions according to their whim. But they've never had to put the sacrifices in that some of the athletes have had to do.
I wasn't a politician. I was just a simple runner. 1 month before the Olympics, something happened, and it took everything from my training, my 3-year or 4-year training. It was really hard.
Today, Bailly suffers the bitterness of a hero who was never appreciated in his own country.
Maybe I could have worth $1 million in other countries, you know. But here I think I'm worth nothing. I'll say this. Maybe one day people will understand. That will be maybe when I die. Usually, you know, when you die, you'll get more friends than when you're alive. Nobody will come to your grave and say, this was the hero. That's it.
While Bailly's career fell victim to politics and the onset of malaria, Walker went on to run more than 100 4-minute miles. And in 1979, at the Bislett meeting in Oslo, he took part in the race which saw his record broken.
Anybody that runs faster than anybody else, you have to accept it gracefully. And there are always going to be people that will run faster. It's just not nice being in the same race, seeing your own world record go, but it was a fact of life. A new king was to come along, and Coe probably went down as one of the greats of all time because He was a new athlete on the block, and his time was about to come.
Coe easing down slightly, but the time, 3 minutes 49 seconds, a new world record.
All great athletes have an ability to dominate their event, and this was a guy that really was a colossus in the sport. So I had recognized, you know, it was. I don't think it's overly humble to say that I was very, very aware of the shoes that I'd stepped into.
By every standard, the new man was a phenomenon. The languid manner and casual stride concealing cold ambition and a voracious appetite for records.
I can remember for 40 minutes holding 4 world records, because I'd broken the 8, I had the mile, broke the 15, and then I went to Oslo in 1980 as a warm-up before the Olympics and broke the 1,000 metres. So I actually had all 4 for 40 minutes, and while I was basking in the glory of that, Steve was busy out on the track taking my mile record off me.
50 metres left. 45, 46, 47, 48. He's very, very close to the world record.
Well, most of the records are a bit boring, really. Tedious sort of stuff, but yeah, necessary, I suppose.
3:48.8. Tedious but necessary. Today, Steve Ovett declines to discuss the past. Last time he spoke, he gave his reasons.
If other people want to look back in 100 years at someone who was running around a city track for sort of like 3.5 minutes and straining the gut to do that, and they think it's wonderful, then fair enough, you know, that's up to them. But there's far more important things in life than to worry about that, really.
And yet, for a couple of crowded weeks in July 1980, there seemed nothing more important than the greatest confrontation since Bannister-Landy.
We not only had a pair who were on the scene, but they were from the same country at the same time. And I think there was that inevitability that we knew, and the media knew, and basically British athletics fans knew, that it could only go one way, and that was that there was going to be, you know, the mother and father of a showdown at some point. And the thing I'm most pleased about is that it was actually in an Olympic stadium.
Kirov leads, Ovett second. Coe is beaten surely. Ovett hits the front, and Coe can't get through. Steve Ovett coming home to take the gold medal for Great Britain, to beat Sebastian Coe against the silver. Kirov gets the bronze.
Well, Jimmy Greaves, in an interview some years ago, asked me how I felt about that, and I was probably being less than forthcoming, and he said, well, let me put it in perspective. He said, when Jeff Hurst nicked my World Cup place, he said, I could have killed him. He said, I mean, when you lost to Steve Ovett, could you have aptly grabbed him by the throat and done damage? Well, I'm not sure I could have gone quite that far, but I was pretty disappointed. I consoled myself with the fact that if I'd been Jim Ryun in 1972, my Olympic career was over. But I had the golden opportunity, given to very few, to bounce back within 2 or 3 days and go out there and try and win a title.
And look at Sebastian Coe there, checking where Ovett is, and Ovett's watching him all the way.
He was only another runner. I had to demythologize him. I got to the point where I didn't mind, actually, whether I won or lost. What I was absolutely determined to do was to walk off that track knowing that on that day, if anybody was going to beat me, it was because they were genuinely a better runner.
And Coe gets the revenge he wants.
So, Coe had saved his career, and Ovett had reinforced his reputation. Now they were seeking records, and during 9 August days of 1981, the mile was battered by an explosion of pace.
Coe going for home. Boyce in second place, Charles third. Can Coe do it? And he's just done it! Boyce second. In third place was Cram, fourth was Walker, 5 Bessingager, 6 delays. And he came back, having missed the 1,500-metre record, to take the world mile record. And he's inside of the record beyond doubt. The last lap he had to run inside 58 seconds.
He's still kicking hard, a bit heavy-legged, but the strength is still there. 3:48.53 to beat. And the world record has gone. He's just inside it. The new figures, unofficially, 3:48.4. And Steve Ovett, within 7 days, gives Sebastian Coe his answer.
Where is the Coe kick? Coe coming away again. 50,000 people on there. Coe's roaring Coe home. He's got a tremendous revival there. And he comes home with a new world record. 3 minutes, 47.3. Boy's in second place. But that is what Coe wanted to do.
Oh, Seb always, in my mind, has been one of the greatest athletes you've ever seen. I mean, no question about it. And I was always aware of that fact. I'm a far better athlete than I am. I mean, I'm not being, that's not false modesty, that's the truth. Far better natural talent than I ever was.
I will say it for him. He was, by a long way, the most talented athlete that I ever ran against. And I'm very grateful and very, very privileged to have been a part of what I think was, well, it was a golden period in British athletics.
To boast 2 of history's greatest milers would satisfy any sporting nation. To boast 3 in the same era represented riches beyond reason. But Steve Cram entered the scene as the finest junior miler since Jim Ryun.
It was okay for me because everyone was watching Coe and Ovett and I could go and do my thing and learn and gain experience and watch what they did. And I spent 2-3 years doing that.
But his first major victory at the '83 World Championships in Helsinki pushed him to the center of the stage. From then on, all was changed.
And in those 2 or 3 minutes, I elevated myself, not just physically, but mentally, from an up-and-coming heir apparent to knew I could win the big one and was good enough to live with those guys. And from that moment on, I never thought of anything else but to beat them.
Coe was not ready to step down, and he defended his Olympic 1500 meters title with style and passion in Los Angeles. But as Ovett succumbed to viral infection and Coe celebrated a famous victory, Cram started to make his plans.
Seb didn't race much after the final in LA. I came back and was really just beginning to get into shape as I went to LA. So when I came back, I was really hungry to go and run some races. And that was when I really first was pushed into the, right, Steve, we've got pacemakers and this is... And I had 2 or 3 disappointments that year, running personal best, you know, knocking 1 or 1.5 seconds off a personal best and then walking into the press box and everyone saying, you must be really disappointed with that, you know, because you'd missed the world record by 3/10 or something. And I guess that kind of made me think, yeah, I'd really like to lay this one to rest. I'd really like to get a world record under my belt just to prove I can do it.
In July '85, the first record arrived, a 1500 meters triumph in Nice. 11 days later, Cram came to Oslo.
The world record was something which I knew I was capable of, but on that night wasn't an issue as far as I was concerned. The main criteria for me was, you know, beat Seb at all costs.
And Coe is beaten. And Coe relaxes. He knows that Cram is away and gone. And the world champion, the European champion, the Commonwealth champion, the world record holder at 1500 meters, majestically comes striding away. This time, is it to crack the world record? Yes, it is. 3:46.3. Gonzalez second, Coe third, Scott fourth.
Fear of defeat is a much greater spur than the fear of the clock ticking by a couple of seconds too fast. You know, it's a much greater fear, and that's what drives you on to push harder and to run faster. I remember finishing the race and I kept saying, everybody, it can't be 3:46, you know, I'm not tired, you know. And then, of course, your big mouth starts going and you go in the press conference and you say, oh, yeah, I can run 3:44, no problem, you know. And you never ever get anywhere near it again.
But one man got near. His name is Noureddin Morsali, and in the Italian town of Rieti in September '93, The young Algerian dipped beneath 3:45 to destroy a record which had stood for 8 years.
3:46:32 da battere, primato del mondo. Grande. 3:44:38, qui non c'è vento che tenga. Grande primato del mondo, ha cancellato Steve Cram.
I wasn't feeling tired, you know. I felt like I did save some energy left in my body. And also it was maybe hard, you know, because I ran last 600 by myself, and that's why maybe my time was 3:44. If I did have pace until maybe 1200, I should maybe run 3:42.
But there is nobody capable of staying with him. Nobody who can test his awesome talent. For the moment, Morsely stands alone.
You have to really love what you are doing if you want to be great. You know, it's not easy to run 3:44. You know, it's very, very hard. You have to be very, very tough. And, you know, if you want something, you know, with hard work, you can do it again.
The young man expresses the old values of stern sacrifice and bold vision. They are also the values of the athlete who once lowered a barrier on a cool spring evening in Oxford and set his successors a terrifying task.
The margin by which the mile record is broken will get less and less as time goes on, and I think the time they will approach is something like 3 minutes 30 seconds.
3 minutes 30 seconds. Well, thank you, Roger Bannister. Tonight, you've seen some of the greatest mile races ever. I hope they thrilled you as much as they did me. Cheerio.